When it comes to different fly fishing methods, streamer fishing is my absolute passion and what I love doing the most. Today we are fishing still water, and we're gonna talk today about something I feel is crucial in catching fish or on streamers, and that is the retrieve. It is such an important factor in how you retrieve your fly. And I'm gonna show several different methods. The retrieves that I use when I fish on the coast for sea trout, and in this instance I fish a lake on Iceland. Today we are on Kárastaðir Beat on Fish Partners stretch. This is on Lake Thingvallavatn. We're actually fishing on the gap between the continental plates from Europe and America. So there's a huge crack here. So we're gonna fish sinking lines. This is the Vibe 85 Sink 3 line. So super cool place, potential for big fish around here for sure. But as I said, these are methods that I use all the time on when I fish still water, like lakes or on the coast. I'm letting it sink here. It's a pretty deep place. Casting along the shoreline here because there's a nice drop off right here, and fishing the Flashtail Baitfish. This is like a 9 centimeter baitfish imitation. So when I'm starting to fish here now, I'll do one of my most common retrieves. This is a retrieve that I caught fish on this through the years, and it's a retrieve that I have as my default. If I'm unsecure, if I haven't had any bites or something and nothing is working, and I don't feel that it's the time to experiment, I always fall back to the retrieve that I will start with. And I'll talk about it a little bit in detail on how I fish it, but I first of all will begin with a little bit of the basics and how you want to hold a rod and how you want what you need to think about with line tension and stuff like that during the retrieve. So as I cast out, I always, no matter if I'm fishing a floating line or a sinking line in this case, I always let the fly sit a little bit on the surface. Just because if I retrieve right away, doesn't matter what line or what fly you have pretty much, you're just gonna retrieve it in the surface film for the beginning of the retrieve. And I think that's a big mistake. Here we have like 15 meter deep, so I can let it sit for quite a while. But if I fish on the coast, for example, and it's just 80 centimeter of water, I throw out a floating line, and still I let the fly sit a little bit, so the leader will go down a little bit in the water. It doesn't have to be much. A slow sinking fly maybe require like 5 seconds to go down through the surface film, but that way you start to fish immediately. Another important factor I think when you retrieve the fly is the slack that you have from your rod tip to the surface. You can choose to have a lot of overhang, or you can choose to have very little overhang. So most of the time when I'm fishing brown trouts, I like to hold the rod tip down like this near the surface, just like a few inches off the surface. And sometimes you can have up to like 1 meter or 3 feet above the surface, so you have a big hang. This is typical for fish that really suck in the fly. So when the fish that is sucking in the fly like this is common for, like, for example, catfish, then you want the slack so the fly really sucks into the mouth of the fish. But for trout, which is more grabbing it, you want as much tension as possible, with a few exceptions. The exception is when you fish really fine tippet. Then you could have a little bit of overhang, just so there is a little bit of wiggle room if the fish takes really hard. You don't want to snap the leader. But for the most of my streamer fishing, I do quite thick leader. Today I'm using 0.33, and that's my standard on the coast as well. So my default retrieve, if you're using a line tray, I want you to place it a little bit behind you, sitting just like on your ass almost, because this is a long one. It requires that you hold out your rod a little bit, you hold it quite far in front of you, have your fingers locking the line, and you open, of course, when you do the pull. So you open your fingers, let the fly slide, lock it, open, and quite a full arm length back with a little bit of a kick on the end. What you want to make is that the fly makes a big dip, and then you speed it up, like it has an accelerating movement on the way up, and topping with like a little lift, and then it falls down. Usually the strikes come just in the drop. This is an retrieve that is excellent for cold water. When you have these little bit slower fish, you give them a long opportunity. When the fly is falling, it's easy for them to grab it. When I've done this over several years, that I've caught more the longer I do the pull like this. So you really accentuate the drop. I think that's the important thing. So you have a long rise and then a long drop. I like that a lot. And it began actually when I started to film, because I wanted the rod in the frame. So I reached out my arm and I caught more fish, strange as it is. Moving on to the next retrieve now. This is a super essential basic retrieve. Is that you put it under your arm and do a smooth motion. If you have a line tray, put it dead center in front of you and just do a smooth motion like this. And as many of you are already thinking, yeah, it's called roly-poly. This is a smooth, even retrieve. You know how often it is that on the cast that you reel in is the one you catch fish. This retrieve is the total opposite of the other one, in the way of that there's no pause in this. This is just a steady going fly that never drops. To show when this setup excels the most, I changed the rig up a little bit. I put a magic head in front here. A magic head makes the fly swim a lot more in the water, and has the big benefit in these retrieves that has like a long continuous swimming motion through the water. You can do a pause here and there, but when you do the roly-poly, this type of stuff is perfect. Or when you fish a wiggle tail, for example, you want that movement from the tail for a long part. That's the main purpose of the fly. Then roly-poly is a great method to do for a retrieve. So we'll give that a go for a while. So this retrieve can be done from anything from slow to fast. It is one of these essential retrieves that you can do all through the year for all type of fish. And the way that you set the hook, or the way that I set the hook at least, is to do just a strip set, that you continue having the tension on the line when a fish takes. You just until you just keep stripping until you feel the tension of the fish, and then you grab the rod and reach for the handle, and you can start fighting the fish. Usually the way I grab the rod, and not over the line of course, but on the blank, and then I can take out the rod, grab it out the handle. But I feel that this is the best hook set that I make actually. It is such a good tension. You always have the feel of the fly when you do this retrieve, the roly-poly. So it is something that I do if I have like continuous bites, no matter what retrieve I do. If I have bite after bite after bite and I don't manage to do a proper hook set, I go to roly-poly and just mimic the retrieve that I had the bite on. So I do a little bit of quick retrieve and a pause, quick retrieve and a pause. That way I mimic the previous retrieve, but having the set right there, so I can be prepared. There's no slip ups, there is no mistakes like this. I feel this is the most effective hook set. And another time when I use this retrieve is actually when I get tired. If my casting is poor, or my shoulders hurt, or my back hurts, it's not only the casting that wears you down, it's also the retrieve, standing being in a mode that when you're prepared for the take and so on. In this retrieve I can be a little bit more lean back, I can drop down my shoulders and just relax a little bit, both the mind and most of all the body, just to have a more comfortable position, more upright. If I do this for 15 minutes I can go back to another retrieve, and that way I don't have to stop fishing. I can always continue fishing because I find it relaxing to be retrieving like this. Åh jävla, lommen kom upp i flugan, helvete. Den får bara sjunka nu. Va? Nej, alltså jag bara la ut. Och så bara dök den upp. For the coming retrieve now, I actually changed up the fly. So I'm fishing an articulated fly with a wiggle tail. They like meaty stuff here, so I like to put on that now as the sun is starting to set. But it's also a great fly for this retrieve, and that is to like sort of jerk with a rod while you retrieve. So it is a retrieve that you both do a strip. I like to put the line basket like 45 degree out from me. I'll do from my chest camera here is that I hit with the rod as I do the retrieve. So at the same time as I pull, and in this cast you want to give some slack. So you hit and then you give slack. This way you make the fly, or you give the fly the opportunity to turn. As the pull goes, it turns, and it turns the other way. Gives a great movement to imitate like an injured baitfish or such. This is a retrieve that is hard to predict for the fish. It doesn't know where it's gonna go next. So usually it leads that, even though you have a little bit of slack in this retrieve, the takes are just so hard because they don't know where it's gonna go next, so they just grab it with full speed. The fishing here can be very visual. So this is a method that I often throw in just as a quick thing. If a fish swims by here, you're standing on a high cliff. So you see a giant brown trout coming by here, you do a normal presentation to it, it doesn't react. You maybe don't have time to change the fly, so this is a perfect thing to just throw in as a different alternative to just to have it go to side. It can often trigger a fish that was not interested to something else. So an injured fish can definitely trigger more than the normal retrieve, like standard jigging up and down. Another common and super effective retrieve that you have to do when trout fishing is just a steady, snappy retrieve that is sort of like a cross in between the retrieves that we've been talking about so far. And instead of holding the rod out, I like to hold the rod quite high for this. Now I'm standing on a high ledge, so I will have to let there be a little bit of slack here. Normally you would sit lower and have more of a contact with the surface like this, but just for showing now, I'll do it standing. And the retrieve is that you have, I like to have the line quite far front on the handle now, so I have it almost locked on the, if you have a full welds handle, it's this drop. I have it squeezed right there when I do this retrieve, and I have the rod pointing in quite a steep angle like this down to the water, and just do quick snappy retrieves like this. You can either do just constant or with pauses. A little bit of the thing that roly-poly does, that it doesn't give the opportunity for the fish to stop and inspect it, like there's no drop or anything. The fly is always going, but instead of going straight like roly-poly, excellent for magic heads, instead you create more of a movement with twitching, like the twitch. It goes like that. A lot of baitfish move like that. Small bursts, and if they're afraid, they will go as fast as they can. So I think it's a very natural movement that you imitate baitfish like that in a great way. I have a day on the coast that I filmed where this retrieve was just outstanding. I tried several different flies and retrieves, and as soon as I did the first retrieve like that, fish on. So it is a great retrieve. You should often try. You can do it slower as well, like this. No really pause, so the fly goes quite steady. Just go, and then you can let it drop if you want. So we do the 4 retrieves again. Arm out, long pulls, and a little bit twitch in the end. Line tray in the center, smooth motion, roly-poly. The third one, jerking with the rod. And fourth, holding rod a little bit higher and very twitchy retrieve like this. I think these 4 are super useful. I do them every single day when I'm out there. It is such a powerful tool to be able to experiment with different retrieves when you're out fishing. Some people try hundreds of flies in a day. Actually, I've changed fly to a Kärki woolly bugger now. Excellent fly for any type of situation and water. More important than the fly is the retrieve I've cleaned. What you can do, there's so many things you can do when it comes to the retrieve. Yeah, fish on! Ooh, that's a good trout. Ooh. Oh, on the twitches! On the twitches! Here it goes. Oh, that's awesome! That's awesome! Ooh, I don't have any brake on. Here we go. Oh, it comes just up in the surface here now. Oh, that's so cool! Oh, it's so... That's a little too hard brake. Oh, that's awesome! On the little twitches. The last method. You should always experiment with each of these methods every day when you're out. Look at that fish in the water. Oh, that's a nice brown trout. Can I take the net here? Yes! Yes, I got it! Woohoo! Oh, that's so great! Oh. I think in general, when it is like this cold, it is -degrees in the air and just a couple of degrees in the water. A slow retrieve is the way to go. And here I did the constant twitching, but with quite a slow pace, and it paid off. Wow. Below 60? Somewhere just below 60 maybe.
It's probably over.
You think so?
Yeah, right over 60.
Yeah.
Nice. Good take?
Yeah, it was a good take.
Yeah.
Just constant twitches, like
Small ones.
yeah, quite slow, and had a pull like quite immediately in the retrieve, and just 10 meters further in on the retrieve it took it properly.
Nice.
So that was awesome. I just knew that there could be one chasing now, and then bam.
Good job, man.
Thanks.
You take them in there?
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff.
That's beauty.
That's recovered quite well. I'll try to grab it and you'll see how similar to sea trout these fish are. They live in this large lake, quite pelagic I think. Oh, it's hard to hold it. We just measured it, it's 64 centimeter. Such a beauty. So there you have it, my 4 different retrieves that I do for streamer fishing in still water. And it can be the complete difference. Well, I did like 7 casts with this. Just when I slow down this steady retrieves, had a little nib, continued retrieving, and there it was. So awesome. So there you have the fly, the Kärki woolly bugger. This is, yeah, a store-bought fly. John Kärki is the one who designed it. A woolly bugger is a killer pattern for any type of fishing. So yeah, this pattern is awesome. It's the one in size 1 with a bead. So I'll leave the exact name in the video description together with what gear I used as always. And earlier in the video I referenced a video where, even more extreme than this, but when I changed the retrieve, that it just snapped and worked. The similar retrieve like I did now, but even faster, a day on the coast. So I'll leave that as a suggestion to watch next here. So yeah, thank you so much for watching and see you over there.